Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good morning, students, parents, faculty, and distinguished guests, and welcome to the 2019 Cum Laude Induction Ceremony. We gather today to celebrate scholarship in its purest and highest form. The students and faculty who sit on the stage before you have been, in the words of the Roman statesman Cicero, litteris dedicata et omnibus artibus, dedicated to letters and all the arts. They have pursued their studies with exuberance and enthusiasm and have rejoiced in the splendor of knowledge. Today, we confer on them Oak Hall's greatest academic honor, election into the Cum Laude Society. In order to explain the history and purpose of Cum Laude, please welcome to the podium our chapter secretary, Ms. Myrony Simpson.
Founded in 1906, the Cum Laude Society is dedicated to honoring scholastic achievement in secondary schools. The society was established by Dr. Abram W. Harris, headmaster of the Tomei School in Port Deposit, Maryland. Dr. Harris and other Tomei faculty members who are members of Phi Beta Kappa established Cum Laude as the secondary school equivalent of Phi Beta Kappa to recognize and encourage true scholarship. For the first 20 years of its history, all schools with cum laude chapters were all-boys schools. In the 1920s, all girls and co-ed schools were added to the membership, and in 1955, the first overseas chapter was added. Currently, there are 382 chapters of cum laude, approximately 24 of which are located in public schools and the rest in independent schools. There are cum laude chapters in 39 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, as well as chapters located in Canada, England, France, Spain, and the Philippines. Approximately 4,000 new members are inducted annually. Oak Hall School's cum laude charter was granted on May 8, 1996. The cum laude logo is also steeped in history. Originally named Alpha Delta Tau Fraternity, the Cum Laude Society adopted a stylized version of the Greek letter tau as its logo. Even though the fraternity evolved into the Cum Laude Society in the 1950s, the original logo was retained. It is used on all official publications and on cum laude pins, which the inductees will receive today. The Greek alphabet developed in classical times around 9th century BC and continues to be used for a variety of other purposes, such as mathematical symbols and the names of stars. Tau is the 19th letter of the Greek alphabet. The motto of society is Arete, Dike, Time, excellence, justice, honor. Arete includes the concept of excellence in the moral sense and is not limited to the ideal of superiority in scholarship, nor does it involve the endeavor of competing primarily for academic goals. Dike includes the concept of what is suitable and appropriate as well as just. Time includes the concept of dignity and truth as well as honor. Mr. President, I certify that those about to be called forward have met the qualifications for membership in the Cum Laude Society and that they have been duly elected by the members of the Oak Hall chapter.
The distinguished record you have exhibited here at Oak Hall School has earned for you membership in the Cum Laude Society. This society is a fellowship of scholars whose purpose is to recognize excellence in academic work. As you pursue your education, it is our hope that you will accept the honor of membership in this society as a responsibility to make a significant contribution to the ongoing human quest for greater understanding of the world in which we live. In testimony of your admission to the Cum Laude Society, by the authority of the society invested in me as president, I now present to you these certificates of membership. When your name is called, please come forth and receive your certificate and membership pin from our chapter secretary. Peter Carolee Atch. Peter couldn't be here today, unfortunately. Pei Wen Gao. Emily Hulin Lee. Avery Carlin Means. Talar Victoria Grace Terzian. Maya Joyce Harris. Keegan Richard Hogan. Haley Rachel Kramer. Yu Ying Lee. Isha Minesh Patel. And Veronica Clara Schmalfus. This year, our Cum Laude chapter will induct 3 distinguished faculty members. The 3 members whom we induct this morning are scholars of the highest order, have given at least 10 years of service to Oak Hall School, have either served on the state or national board of their professional teaching organization and/or made multiple presentations at conferences, and have pioneered and led signature programs at the school. When your name is called, please come forth and receive your certificate and membership pin from our chapter secretary. Elizabeth Rickman Caro. Lin Chung Wong, Miss Ginger Lin. Dr. Generosa Sanko Jackson. At this time, I am proud to call to the stage Sarah Pincus, Stephanie Miller, Anya Aitsalia, and Griffin Williams, who will perform a piece entitled See You Around by I'm With Her.
I hear you loud and clear. A constant ringing bell, or the ocean shall lie up to my ear. while everything else is breaking like the waves down on the coastline, breaking like the wine-stained glass that held my drink, breaking like the heart that's stuck inside my skin. Will it ever beat again, or just go on bleeding till it's empty, till I fill it up again? I feel you, baby. These aren't fighting words, just a declaration. I feel you, so I guess I'll be going now. I know you're looking out for new eyes in the crowd. I'll see you around, breaking like the waves down on the coastline, breaking like the wine-stained glass that held my drink, breaking like the heart that's stuck inside my skin. Go on, fill it up again. Shiny pieces underneath my feet, shiny pieces are not all of me. There's a far-off feeling I can't shake it, hold it in my hands but I might break it. Shiny pieces all around me, breaking like the waves down on the coastline, breaking like the wine-stained glass that held my drink, breaking like the heart that's stuck inside my skin. Go on, fill it up again, fill it up again, fill it up again.
Thank you, guys. That was beautiful. Well, good morning again. It gives me the greatest pleasure to introduce this morning's cum laude speaker, Mr. Gabriel Molina. A graduate of Harvard College and a current MD candidate at Harvard Med, Gabriel was the valedictorian of the Oak Hall class of 2011. In his time as a student here, he was an exemplar of Oak Hall's motto of scholarship, leadership, and service. To this day, his speech that he gave in his campaign for SGA president is among the best I've ever heard. So good, in fact, that I told him he should recycle it for whenever he decides to run for president of the United States. He's got my vote. On behalf of the members of the Cum Laude Society, please join me in welcoming back to campus Mr. Gabriel Molina.
Thank you for that incredibly kind introduction and for the opportunity to be a part of this ceremony. I've had really two thoughts about this speech since I was first asked to do it a few months ago. My first thought, right after Mr. J asked me, was yes, of course I'd do it. I always loved the chance to be around this community. In addition to being an alum, like Mr. J mentioned, I have several friends who are now teachers here, former teachers who are now close friends of mine, and most recently, thanks to Alyssa Schmidt, I'm an honorary +1 at faculty events. My second thought on this speech occurred to me about a week ago when I realized I had absolutely no idea what I was going to say today. Despite understanding and appreciating what cum laude signifies, I genuinely had no idea what to talk about. So, after some serious self-reflection, I decided that I'd talk about that feeling of having no idea what to talk about. It's a great speech premise, I know. But bear with me here, because the thing is, I actually wasn't so bothered by the fact that for a while I didn't know what I was going to say today. In fact, that uncertainty was strangely reassuring. Now, there was definitely a time when I would have hated it, when I would have incorrectly equated not knowing exactly what to say with not having anything meaningful to say. But since graduating high school, my academic studies, continuously and often subconsciously reinforced by real-world experiences, have taught and empowered me to embrace uncertainty when faced with it. And while I'm still working on it, I truly believe that underneath those bedrock principles of academia, things like curiosity and collaboration, learning to embrace uncertainty is one of the hidden gems of pursuing meaningful scholarship. So I'd like to share with you just a couple examples of how this abstract, admittedly fluffy concept has actually played out in my life. Going into senior year of college, inspired by a study abroad program in Rome, I decided first that I was going to write a senior thesis, which was not required, and second, that my thesis would center on a 6th century BC monument from a tiny island off the coast of Greece, which is no longer standing and of which there are no pictures. So I dug myself into a pretty big hole before senior year had even started. It quickly dawned on me that I had committed to spending a whole year thinking and writing about something I knew very little about. I couldn't ask the people of 6th century Sifnos why they built their treasury or why they had depicted particular myths all around it. We may never know. And it took me so long to recognize that that's fine. I wanted answers. I wanted clarity. I wanted to be able to say something definitively. But it was only after I abandoned this search for some objective, unattainable truth that I began to realize for probably the first time that unknowable things provide the greatest room for unrestrained observation and new ideas. I was so relieved once I stopped trying to hammer out the details of what happened that I was finally able to identify patterns of human behavior, common elements of commemoration and storytelling, and link them back to the way we narrate our lives today. So even in the absence of total certainty, you can and should continue to ask questions that matter to you, and you'll find, I'm sure, tremendous meaning and valuable insight. And of course, the classics doesn't have a monopoly on uncertainty. I could share so many examples from the dermatology clinic, where I often find myself meeting patients whose diagnostic mystery and inconclusive test results could create tremendous frustration. But we have to find a way to acknowledge the uncertainty, embrace it, and instead of suggesting another round of evaluations in the hopes that we'll stumble into a clearer answer, we offer a reasonable path forward and give them a plan to hold on to. So from this first example, I hope you can see how the skill of embracing uncertainty, which emerged in my case from classical scholarship, has found a new home in a different setting. And its applicability is, of course, not the only reason I chose to study classics. I believe that scholarship of any sort has inherent value, but it's often amazing how far that value can extend when you allow it to. So it may not be the fact that someone can translate the Rosetta Stone that's most important, but rather the fact that someone who can do that must have a set of skills which themselves translate into ideas and services that could help real people tackle real problems. It's why I'll always encourage you to study whatever it is you're passionate about. Because even if someone tried to argue that the content of your scholarship is not itself applicable, or the latest buzzword is marketable, let me remind you that the means of pursuing it most certainly are. We don't all need to become classics majors, though I'm not opposed to the idea, but in order to become the kinds of people that can make a difference in the world, each of us needs to find that outlet that allows us to feel excited rather than stressed when we stumble across something we don't know or don't immediately understand. So now moving on to my second example, which is a bit fresher in my mind. Having spent the past year doing clinical research, I was giving a talk recently at a dermatology conference in DC, and I was way more nervous for it than I'd been before. I'm sure it had something to do with the audience, but I think the main reason for my nerves was that I knew going in that the conclusions of my presentations would raise far more questions than answers, that they projected uncertainty way more than they clarified it. So I was nervous giving the talk, and I was especially nervous when afterward I noticed a woman who'd been seated in the front row approaching me. She introduced herself simply as Bernice, and thankfully we started off with some light small talk. It didn't take long, however, for me to glance down at her name tag and notice first her last name, which identified her clearly as the senior author of a paper I had referenced probably a dozen times in my talk. And then second, in what looked like 84-point font, was the name Stanford under her name. Now, you may not know that while Stanford is sometimes flatteringly called the Harvard of the West Coast, most Harvard students, including myself, have a weird obsession with Stanford. And it becomes a lot less weird when you realize that Stanford is basically Harvard, but with better sports and warmer weather. So the conversation continues. I try to act normal, and then she hits me with a pretty intense, high-level question about my project and my presentation and how we, since I guess we're friends now, could address it and move the field forward. And the truth was that I didn't have a great answer for her. I didn't feel like this field of research was far enough along to adequately substantiate any answer I could come up with. So here I was, face to face with one of my research role models, presented with a totally fair, very thoughtful question, and I genuinely didn't know how to answer it. Of course, I couldn't say simply, I don't know. I mean, how lame is that? So instead, I looked at her and said, I honestly have no idea. And I guess I threw in the word honestly to sort of soften the blow. I paused for a second and went on to say that I felt like there were so many important questions left to answer before we could get to a place of understanding from which we could tackle her question, essentially answering her one question with about 8 follow-up questions. She looked back at me, nodding, and then she said, "I couldn't agree more." I don't know exactly what she agreed with, but suddenly we were thrown into a 45-minute conversation throughout which we were sharing project ideas and sharing in the excitement of having no idea where our research would take us. Knowing it was one of the most productive conversations I've had, it scares me to think I could have so easily offered vague, hand-wavy, almost political answers and ended the conversation right then and there. I'm thankful that I decided in that moment to embrace the uncertainty I was feeling, to express it outwardly, and in doing so to create a space where ideas can be shared freely without the burden of foregone conclusions. Now, before I wrap up, I should admit that this is by no means a new or original idea, though I hope that my personal examples have made it a bit more real for you. But Socrates was saying all this 2,500 years ago, and I think you all intuitively know that uncertainty breeds productive and lively discussion. It's fun to take what you know and extrapolate it to the unknown, to blend reality and imagination to discover new ideas. It's not interesting to have a conversation with someone who has all the answers. It's called a lecture. So we know these things to be true, and we've known them for a while. And yet education can often feel like it's all about clarifying uncertainty. It's about not knowing how to take an integral one day and then knowing how to do it the next day or the next month. A transition from blurry point A to crystal clear point B that's as simple as focusing your camera lens, but gets repeated enough times that you forget how to use the dozen other breathtaking features of your camera. It's reinforced by tests with one correct answer, or the dreaded multiple choice answer J, which reads answers A, D, G, and sometimes none of the above. And this process is incredibly important, don't get me wrong. We need to practice it. But we have to resist getting so focused on clarifying uncertainty that we lose sight of the value of embracing it. Uncertainty is not ignorance. Uncertainty is not a lack of knowledge, but rather a lack of answers, which implies very intentionally that you still have questions, that you're not empty-handed. And embracing uncertainty starts in the classroom. It starts with signing up to analyze the speech you've never heard of, rather than the speech you previously memorized, with ending your essays and presentations in a question mark, and with not being afraid to answer with, "I don't know." It's not always easy or practical, I get it, but I think and hope you'll be surprised with how far this habit of embracing uncertainty can take you. Instead of bouncing ideas off of like-minded individuals who are bound to agree with us, maybe we'll ask someone to explain their opinions, which we didn't quite understand the first time. Maybe by accepting we may not have all the answers, especially to important questions, we won't be embarrassed to second-guess our initial thinking or to even change our minds. And maybe one day, we'll find ourselves agreeing to give a speech when we have no idea what to say, and maybe, just maybe, by embracing that uncertainty and trusting in the process of discovery, we'll find the right words and hope that it'll turn out all right after all. Thank you.
Well, from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to thank Gabriel for embracing the uncertainty and coming to give that wonderful speech. I'm glad to know that I'm, not the only one who doesn't know what they're doing half the time. Before we rise for the singing of the alma mater, I'd just like to invite all of the inductees and members and their families to take a picture outside, and then there will also be a brief reception following. So if you will now please stand with me as we sing together our alma mater, the words of which are printed on your program. The alma mater will be performed by Anya Aitsalia. Noble eagle, call down victory, never waver, never fall. With our voices raised on high, alma mater praised by all. Scholar, leader, servant be, hail to gold and burgundy. Memories cherished, one and all, alma mater dear, O call. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.